Hi, Michael.
Just give folks one more minute to join and then we'll formally get started. All right, I think I'm going to invite us to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone on behalf of SDI, the Home for Spiritual Companionship, to our town hall gathering today. This town hall is called Serving the Soul in Initiatory Times, Teaching, Practice, and Community Conversation. My name is Frederica Helmier, and I serve as the Director of Programs and Events at SDI. And on behalf of SDI, you are very welcome in this space. It's an honor to be sharing this, this virtual sacred space with people from all over. Some people are introducing themselves in the chat box, and feel free to keep that going. We love knowing who is here with us. Feel free to say where you are or just a little greeting. I am so honored to be here today with our guests, Carolyn Griffith and Tama, who will be introduced shortly by Lizzie. But I have the honor of introducing you all to our facilitator, Lizzie Salzich. Lizzie is SDI's Community Outreach and Program Development Coordinator, and she facilitates SDI's new Contemplatives program. She is a community weaver and a spiritual practitioner in her home in St. Louis, Missouri. And Lizzie leads classes and workshops in body-based sacred practice. She completed her contemplative spiritual direction training through the Alcyon Center for Spiritual Living in Maine. And she is passionate about furthering the work of liberatory, counter-oppressive, and embodied spiritual companionship. And as a colleague and a friend, I can attest that she does these things beautifully. I'm going to pass the mic to Lizzie to facilitate this gathering.
Thank you so much, Frederica, and thank you to all who are gathered here. As a way to begin, I like to begin in song. So I will share a song, and it's easy to sing along with or listen in as you wish. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you in me. Sing with me if you wish. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you in me. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you in me. We find you together in the dark. We find you in the dark. We find you in the dark. We find you, we do. In the dark, we find you. In the dark, we find you. In the dark, we find you, we do. Sacred source of creation of all of light and darkness and life. Thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come together in this way, for the aliveness, the embodied presence here and now. First Nations peoples of the places where we each are, we give our great respect to you. Bright and well ancestors of my own and of all who are gathered and all who are listening in, thank you for showing up for us and for this world in the way that you are. Thank you. Earth, more than human world that we weave inside of, thank you so much for showing us what it means to be related, for showing us what it means to be a part of this web of life. Please keep showing us how to be part of this web of life in a good way. And we ask that the gifts of this time be brought forth for the individual, collective, and cultural healing needed at this time. Thank you, sweetness. Thank you, song and silence. And thank you, soul. Thank you, everyone.
Amazing.
So good to be here with you all. This is the first time I've ever done a Zoom activity where I don't see all the people who get to participate. So I'm imagining your presence, listening in, and I'm so grateful to be here with Carolyn, with Taya, with Frederica. Thank you, SDI, and thank you, Matt, especially Whitney. I know you're out there, for the invitation. As Frederica said, my name is Lizzie, and I convene the New Contemplatives. I work with SDI in various ways, but primarily as the convener of the New Contemplatives, which is a scholarship program and vocational support opportunity for emerging spiritual companions in their first half of life. It's a great joy to do that. And Tama and Carolyn have both been a part of that program in various ways. My spiritual journey, my life journey, my journey into spiritual leadership has always been gratefully guided by mentors and companions. And I'm so happy today and honored to introduce to you two of my closest companions, Tama, Shira, and Carolyn Griffith. These women have both walked intimately with me on my own journey, and I learned so much from the way both of them listen to and seek and serve soul in service to the collective. I'll begin by sharing a little bit about Carolyn and Taya, and then we'll orient to our flow together, and then we'll move deeper in with Carolyn. So Carolyn is a dear friend of mine and a powerful spiritual director here in our home of St. Louis and in our community here. She mentors social visionaries and emerging spiritual companions across the country. And she's also the founder of Earthkeeper Wisdom School, which is a ceremonial community based here in the Midwest that explores the power of ritual and community as a tool for social change. She works in dream practice, in grief work, in passionate prayer, and in living her most authentic soul's life here. Tama is someone I could say so many of the same things about. Taya has also been a profoundly transformative presence in my life, and it's been a great gift to work with you, Taya, as teacher and mentor and collaborator. As the co-founder of Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute, Taya Ma also mentors social visionaries and emerging spiritual leaders across the country. She travels nationally and internationally, teaching on ancestral reverence practice, embodied presence, ritual leadership, and sacred song. And it's so good to be with both of you today. So thank you for being here. We're gonna move through 2 different portions of teaching and practice, and then we will have some time for Q&A and community conversation towards the end. There's a chat box. Feel welcome to connect with us in that way through the chat with your comments and your reflections. They're all welcome here. You are so welcome here. And there's a Q&A box, which is a portion that will be used for more of the direct if you have direct questions. You can save those till the Q&A portion, or if there's things that you want to track sooner than that, you can drop them in, but we won't be responding directly to those until later on in our time today. I think that's all. And I'd love to begin by passing it along to Carolyn. And I wonder, Carolyn, if you would tell us about, as a way to enter in, about your work accompanying souls through initiation.
I'd love to. And I just want to start by saying how perfectly right it feels to be leading this discussion, especially in fellowship with you and Taya, who I feel a special sense of co-journeying together. And also at this particular time, this particular historic moment. So thank you. Thank you, Lizzie, for pulling us together. And I want to begin with a little bit of a personal story. Lizzie, you know well that I am a soul-centric spiritual director. That is my unique practice. But what you might not know is that some years ago, I had a vision that part of my role was to greet people at the crossroads and help them cross over. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't quite sure what this vision meant. And then serendipitously, I opened this book to a random page. This book, The Hebrew Priestess, was co-written by Taya Shira, who's here with us. And I opened to this page and this passage, which has come to be like a stepping stone for me into my calling. So I'll read you just a paragraph here that is a description of the wise woman priestess. The wise woman priestess meets us at the crossroads and illuminates the way. She shepherds us through initiations in which we become familiar to ourselves. We enter the mystery and we emerge transformed. Initiation is the transformation from one state of being to another, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. An initiatory experience may gradually shift us or suddenly catapult us into becoming our new and next selves. Initiations are rites of passage that carry us to where and who we have never been before and away from where we can never fully return. Initiation can be carefully crafted or it can be thrust upon us. The wise woman is the bearer of initiation. She is the servant to and guide of this sacred and potent process. The words of Taya that speak to my role so clearly. So reading these words some years ago was a form of soul encounter for me. That was part of my larger soul's journey of initiation at that time. So I want to begin by explaining, what do I mean by soul? And how do I understand the process of initiation, which is both individual and collective? My favorite definition of the soul comes from ecotherapist and Vision Quest leader, Bill Plotkin. Bill Plotkin writes, "Soul asks us to do what we most long to do, which is that which we are most terrified to do, to bring into the world the beauty that only we can imagine. This is the key to cultural renaissance." There is so much to this definition, but I want to unpack it a moment. You know, it starts by saying, soul asks us to do what we most long to do. So soul is revealed to us and our passions and our longings and our desires. But then it says that soul asks us to do what we are most terrified to do. So there's another truth that perhaps our greatest fear is inhabiting the truth of ourselves, our truth, the truth of our true power. Then he says, what we are terrified to do, to bring into the world the beauty that only we can imagine. So here is this potent word, imagine. And it's really through images and symbols and dreams that our souls commonly speak to us, through the gift of imagination. And finally, he says, this is the key to cultural renaissance. In my understanding, our souls guide us to our proper place in the ecology of life. And it is from this place that we are truly sourced, that we get plugged in to the web of life that will seek to use us for the world's emerging wholeness. Another definition of soul that I think of daily comes from Marianne Williamson, who writes, the part of you that believes life is a struggle is not the real you. The real you has a God-given purpose that the whole universe is set up to support. So our souls are the part of us that are in active conversation with the universe, that are in a call and response, a dialogue with the universe, who's seeking to support us, to align us. And the dynamic tension of our lives is between our souls who dwell in this field of interconnection and our operating egos that are stuck in some illusion of separation. But fortunately, our souls are always speaking, trying to awaken us to the greater truth of who we are. And sometimes this happens in kind ways, like the story I began with, opening a book on a shelf, and there it is, a revelation of myself. But even that soul encounter, that was like a sprinkle of grace that came to me after a raging storm where my whole life had been torn apart, where discontent and very telling dreams showed me that my marriage was over and called me to walk forth into the unknown with a special needs child in my soul care. So our souls come to us in, I would say, three primary ways. Our souls speak to us in three primary ways, and reteaching this literacy of the soul is a primary part of my calling. Now, it's the first way I've already spoken of, which is through longings and passions and what resonates in us. The second is through dreams and visions and signs and synchronicities. But the third is what is the focus of this conversation, which is when our soul comes to us through radical disruptions, which often include symptoms, trials, and great upheavals. And this third way typically befalls us when we have ignored the more gentle nudges of soul. And when we have created cultures that have left behind the rites of passages that bring forth visionary experiences and that initiate the youth into adulthood. Eco-theologian Thomas Berry argues that healthy human cultures spring from visionary experience. from each individual finding their own vision for their lives and embodying it for the community. And I found that very profound to consider, that a healthy human culture would be rooted in visionary experience. And I noticed that how far that is from the culture we're living in. This culture that is so, so embedded in the myth of linear progress and personal achievement that has left behind our initiatory rituals. So what is initiation? In my understanding, initiation is an orchestrated experience of change and challenge that solicits a breaking open so that we can experience the greater truth of ourselves that our egos are usually shielding from our vision. And I say that it's an orchestrated experience because if it's not orchestrated by your tribe or your peoples, it is nonetheless orchestrated by your soul's collusion with the greater universe, perhaps with your ancestors. And initiation takes us through a three-part process. Same as the hero's journey. The first step in this arc is separation. Separation from business as usual that takes us into a sort of weird liminal zone where we don't know what to do. Perhaps that sounds familiar to us in these times. And the second step is ordeal. Ordeal, in which our normal ways of proceeding are challenged and our normal identities dissolved. In my assessment, our modern spiritual frameworks really underestimate the need for tragic, often traumatic ego defeat to awaken us into the life of our souls. And therefore it can be pretty disorienting when this is our experience. The third step is returning. Returning means coming back to your communities, transformed, and having a place where your newness can be seen and where your gifts can be received. And perhaps this is the most lacking component of all in our modern culture, is having soul-centric communities that we can return to, that can see us in our newness. So what is true of the individual's journey of awakening to the soul is also true for organizations, for cultures, for nations who also have souls, and who also, in my sense, there's a collective soul. Sometimes this is called a diva of any organization or of any culture. And this too can be either aligned or out of alignment with what is of greatest service to life as a whole. So interestingly, for the first time in human history, in modern times, there's also somewhat of a global culture that perhaps a majority of peoples on earth are participating in to some extent, by choice or by capture. We're participating to some extent in a culture dedicated to economic growth, to the dollar, to comfort, to security, to individual accomplishment and material acquisition. So since there is a global culture, not to say that all peoples are participating, but there is somewhat of a global culture, there can also be a global initiation. And just like individuals, just like individual initiations, our cultural initiations get more bumpy, more rocky, to the extent that they have departed from what is inherently in alignment with soulful living. So during this time of COVID-19, we have all been having a very unique experience. On one hand, there is no generalizations to what we've been going through. And on another hand, we have been participating to various extents in a collective experience, going through the arc of initiation, separation, ordeal, and returning. So how do we know if we've gone through a true initiation together? When we are truly initiated, there is a profound realization that our former way of living no longer meets the mandates of our heart, along with a resolute commitment to no longer betray ourselves. So basically, if we've been through an initiation, it is clear because we are not going to go back to the way things were. And there's a resoluteness in us that there must be a new way forward. A new way forward that is more satisfying at the deepest level, more real and more true to our hearts. So when I think about the journey we've been on as a culture in this time of COVID-19, I return to the image of crossroads. Will this be an experience that helps us to cross over individually and collectively from one way of being into another? Or will it be, for some, a tremendous ordeal and others an extended vacation? And that's all. Let's go back to business as usual. So in my closing moments, I would like to lead us through a process of self-inquiry to reap the harvest of this initiatory cycle that we have all been in to various extents. And as you go through this with me, it may be helpful to have a pen and paper just to take a few notes of what it draws up for you. So I'm going to give you a minute to grab that if you haven't already. So let us center ourselves as I call in the wisdom of soul. Oh, blessed soul, and each one of us, we just invite you here into this circle. May you be so warmly welcomed and well held. And may we attune to your voice, to your visions, to your wisdom during this time of self-inquiry so that we can harvest the wealth of this time of unraveling. And so that our communities can be renewed as we incorporate new visions of higher possibility. So we welcome here the vast wisdom of soul. And I invite you just to take a moment to make yourself comfortable in your body, to breathe into your heart, to drop down into your feet. Just welcome in here into this space, your full body's wisdom and presence. So I invite you now to recall the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak. How was your life first impacted? What was it that you had to let go of? Or what was the invitation that you were invited to lean into? What virtues and strengths were drawn out of you, either to get through or to show up for your family and community? How has this time brought you greater clarity about what ways of being are most soul nurturing? What within your former or current experience no longer meets the mandates of your soul? Is there some way of being or living that you have outgrown? Has this time of liquefaction also been a time of increased vision? Have you had visions or glimpses of dormant aspects of you seeking expression? If so, what have such soul encounters revealed of your unbridled nature? How might your newfound understanding of what is most true to you and most soul satisfying be shared with your community? Finally, our collective experience of disruption has also spurred revelation. In this time of national crisis, what have you witnessed that has awakened you or connected you more fully to your values? Have you had visions of the more beautiful world that could be? If so, what are these visions? As you return to your community, how might you share these visions and take a step towards the more beautiful world that your heart longs for? Before we transition, I just invite you to take note, either in your heart or on your paper, of anything that has resonated deeply with you in this self-inquiry process. This resonance is also a sign that your soul is speaking. I am happy to share these questions with you, for you to share either with your one-on-one clients or in future gatherings of small circles. May we come together. May we come together as we, transition as a culture and ask one another, what have you been through? And what do you now know? What is your soul calling to you now? Thank you all. And I look forward to your reflections and responses as we end.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I always appreciate drinking from your well. We're going to transition now to Tama, but as we do so, I invite just a moment of embodied integration of that soulfulness, of that soulful delivery. It's my experience in my life, initiations, whether through loss or through grief or through just not knowing the way, that they can feel as times of darkness. And that's also my experience that times of darkness can be such fertile, luminous places, such fertile, loving places. So we'll sing again by way of transitioning. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you in me. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you in me. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you. In the dark, I find you in me. We find you in the dark. We find you in the dark. We find you in the dark. We find you. We do. In the dark, we feel you. 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 We do feel you. In the dark, we feel you. In the dark, we feel you. In the dark, we feel you. We do.
What an immense blessing to be here in this shared weaving. So grateful for the pleasure of this gathering, and so grateful for the miracle, the many miracles that are in this moment that allow us to be here in this tech, in these bodies, alive in this day, coming together in this way. Thank you for weaving with us and with me. What I know about navigating times of stretch, how I orient in times of chaos or deep unknown, is precisely the same as what I know about how to show up in times of greatest joy, greatest clear possibility, magic and blessing. The path and practice of rooting in positive resource is what shapes me and what sustains me and what I desire to bring into our cauldron here today. I come to practice of healing initially in my training as a somatic experiencing practitioner, a body awareness-based healing modality, which invites us to understand that trauma doesn't heal first by focusing on the places of fragment. Trauma doesn't heal first by focusing on the places of greatest distress. Trauma, we understand through tracking the physiology of healing, begins by rooting in positive resource, begins by turning our attention to what is already well in the system, what is already well in the body, in the energy body, in the community body, in the ancestral body. Not as a way of bypassing the places of distress, but as a way of attending to, attuning to, learning from, resourcing from what is most vibrant, what is most resilient in us, that we may bring that to the places that need loving care, that we may bring that resonance to support the tending of what is most challenging. I invite you in this moment to notice what is in your body, first without seeking to change it or find anything specific, just noticing what is right now in this moment inside of you. And inside of this, noticing also a place of positive resource in you. Notice what feels well enough, what feels connected, what feels solid, what feels strong. Perhaps it is your back against a chair, or your feet on the floor, or the ease and spaciousness in your breath. Perhaps it's movement that wants to come into your limbs. Noticing some place in you that is easeful enough. And if that's too challenging to find inside of you, noticing something in the space where you are that is pleasurable to you or brings you joy, perhaps a texture or a color, something that feels good. In this moment, bringing attention on what is well here in you or with you right now. I'm just hanging out there for a moment. For me, I'm noticing the movement in my spine, the nourishing quality of that fluidity, and letting myself play with that. And an invitation here, if you are inclined or able, is to multi-track, to continue to rest your awareness in that place of ease or connection in your body or your energy body or your space, while also widening your awareness to the field that we are sharing together, to our connection right here, right now, directly. Not leaving yourself to come into presence with me, but deepening in yourself to be here in this circle, and noticing at any point in our conversation if it's supportive to you to drop back in to that positive resource. For me, the practice of rooting in positive resource, which I turn to again and again and again in moments of calm, in moments of distress, is where I find greatest ground, and is what supports me in my own healing and showing up well with capacity for presence in community. And also, it's how I find support in the ancestral realms, which I'll speak about in a few. First, I want to speak to the quality, the practice, the path of embodied presence. For me, perhaps the greatest gift of this life is simply being here. And well, that sounds simple enough. It's taken me over 4 decades to learn how to actually be here. I'm quite good at going off there or going here. And the practice of embodied presence, of inhabiting this body, of inhabiting this moment, of inhabiting this connection, is one that asks for continual cultivation. How I know to cultivate embodied presence, how I know to saturate myself with my own presence rather than being in constant reactivity to what is around me and the many inputs, is a few things. First, I attune to pace. I track right pace as prayer, right pace itself as prayer, noticing what pace supports me being inside of optimal presence. Does the pace that I am moving at in my communications, in how fast I go from my bed to brush my teeth, in the way I'm typing something, does that pace actually allow me to inhabit presence in this moment amidst all else that's happening? If not, how can I adjust that? What pace supports my optimal presence? And as I name this question that I often again and again ask myself, I ask it also to you. What pace supports your optimal presence? I invite you to ask yourself the ways that your current pacing supports you here. And what might you adjust in your pacing that you be more here? In addition to right pace as prayer, I track transition. My understanding and experience is that energy is built, gathered, or dissipated in moments of transition, that transitions are rarely neutral. And by transition, I might mean a great change, an ending or beginning of a new home or relationship or work. But much more, I mean the many transitions we inhabit in every day. I am not leaving the house where I am, and yet I cross so many thresholds each day, from this place to that. Every morning when I wake, I cross the threshold of horizontal to vertical. How I tend that transition shapes much of my day. Whether I rise fast and turn to tech, whether I listen first to my body and let movement move me, let myself be led by what is intrinsic and flowing rather than reacting to stimulus outside of me. These things shape me. I invite you to consider how you are in relation to transition right now, how transition and how you show up inside of it is serving your optimal presence or not, what you might adjust or attune to support you being more fully here, even when so many things might seem to pull you elsewhere. And lastly, in the realms of attuning to embodied presence, I invite attention on state transmission. What energy qualities do you desire to imbue your moments and your life and your interactions with? Not changing what you feel, but adjusting for what else is possible. And for me, in all of these strands, I lean into support from the ancestors. In all of these strands, I listen for my bright and benevolent ancestors. And in this moment, I invite you to do that too. Many of us who have experiences of intergenerational trauma feel that ancestor connection might be fraught, might have lots of trouble in it. Yes, so much respect to that. And my understanding is that healing happens in the ancestral body, much like it happens in the physical body, the energy body, the community body. That we hold space, we hold boundary with places of greatest trouble first, and lean further back to the ancient ones in our lineages, our blood lineages, our family lineages, our lineages of craft or vocation or of movements for justice, our lineages of spiritual tradition, to find the greatest sources of wellness there, the bright, loving, wise, benevolent ancestors, to welcome them, to cultivate relationship with them, to invite them as a source of blessing and goodness in our own lives. And as I move toward completing, I want to invite you, we'll find our way into some song leaning into this blessing of the bright, well, benevolent ancestors in a moment. And as we do, lean back into that wellness of our ancestors, to let them, to invite them, to ask them to be a source of blessing, healing, guidance, and goodness for us, to reclaim our, what I feel is our birthright, to have direct connection with our bright and well ancestors, to repair what has often been fragmented through forced and chosen diaspora, through stories lost, through traditions obscured, that we can reclaim connection with these ones. And my invitation to you here, holding boundaries with any spots of trouble, not engaging that, letting that be far away. Leaning in, welcoming the bright, well, benevolent, loving ones who show up for you, who want to show up for you. Feeling their goodness in your life, and if it's right for you in this moment, as we sing, Lean Back, a song that has brought me so much support by a student and friend of mine, Sarah Salem. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Join me on that. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Come close, they say. Come close, they say. Come close, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Trust, they say. Trust, they say. Trust, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Feel welcome to put whatever they say to you in this moment in the chat, and we'll sing some of that. Love, they say. Love, they say. Love, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Joy, they say. Heal your shame, they say. We've got you, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Be still, they say. Self-pleasure, they say. Enjoy this, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Come close, they say. Come close, they say. Come close, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. We're right here. We're right here. With such great gratitude to all that holds us, and with such great gratitude to each of you.
Thank you so much, Taya. And thank you again, Carolyn. I appreciate this conversation, as I also find in times of initiation, in times of soulful uncovering for myself individually in my life and in the communities that I'm a part of and in the world that I'm a part of, that having practices to draw on my deepest resource through embodied presence, through connection with my wise ancestors, through the various ways that resource is cultivated, that's so important in my capacity to be able to show up for what is asked for, the movement, the growth, the evolution, the transition, the initiation that is called for. So I want to open now. We are nearing the end of our time, and it feels important to make time for question, for conversation. And so I invite now, if there are direct questions in to be shared or reflections to be shared communally, that questions come into the Q&A. We probably have time for one or two questions. And before we formally close, I want to give time for conversation and those who will have to leave us at noon. We're grateful that you could be with us. I'm gonna take a look up at the chat. There's one, yeah. There's a question that came through. One for Carolyn and one for Taya. Brad asks, do you understand the soul as an individual, collective, both, neither, or something else? And yeah, you're on mute. Yeah, there you go.
Brad, I would say yes to all of that. I understand the soul as all of those things and more. I think that's enough for now. But I think that we can attend to the soul and connect with the soul of all beings and all collective beings.
There is a, I'm gonna find the chat, where I can find the chat, though I lost it, so I'm not sure.
I'll chime in. I see the question from me.
Yeah.
From Matt. I'm trying to find something good in my body where I can rest and sense energy, but all I feel is tiredness. Is that okay? Yes, that is so okay. So real. I imagine there are many folks here in a similar experience. One thing I want to appreciate is that you sense tiredness, that you're able to track in your body. That itself, that you notice what is in your body, for me is not only a gift, but a muscle building of how we track. And so in my way of practicing, noticing the tiredness and letting yourself feel that and let go into that, and letting whatever is there be medicine for you. And if you also want to be in a practice of looking for positive resource and can't find any in your body, you might see what beyond your body feels good to you that you can meet the tiredness with. Perhaps you feel tiredness in your body, and you can also notice the really soft texture of the blanket that you wrap around you, or the way that your pillow rests into the head. I have tiredness too. The way your head rests into the pillow. Seeing if there are ways that you can be in the tiredness, and perhaps even there's somewhere in the tiredness that feels good. Perhaps it's a weight or a cry for relief or rest. But mostly, I would be curious what else you can also bring to that in your space that feels good, or even in your mind's eye, a pleasurable image of a time that you did feel rested, remembering what that feels like in your body, bringing that memory of feeling rested, not as a longing only for something to be different, but a remembering of those qualities and letting them find their place in you. Before saying full stop, I'll say yes. Whatever you are noticing, whatever you are feeling, tiredness included, is very much more than okay.
There's been a administrative question that surfaced a couple of times, which is, will this recording be available? And the answer is yes. This entire recording of this beautiful experience will be available to rewatch and to share afterwards.
Are there any more questions for Carolyn or for Taya or for our community of people watching that would like to be explored, or any potent reflections that would like to be offered through the chat. Just let yourself notice what this time has been for you, where the wisdom has landed for you and your body, where the questions might still linger. I see a couple questions coming through around the songs. And yes, it's a gift to share the song. We'll put a link in the chat box for the song that Taya Ma just sang. That's by a community member of ours, Sarah Salem, and Sarah is currently actually raising funds to record that song to make it more widely available. So I'd love to share that with you. And yeah, the song that I sang is perfect to be shared in sacred space.
And was written by you, Lizzie.
And was written by me, yes. I'm just trying to see if I can pull up our chat. I'm having trouble finding the chat on my bar. Okay, beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for being here. We welcome your responses and reflections to just continue to move into your day and to be in touch with Tama and Carolyn as is helpful. Frederica, I know that you are able, I don't know if you're able to put the information in the chat that is.
Yeah, there's information. I'll add it once more because it's now a little bit further up in the chat box, but the link to support the song creators, I'll put in here again. And yes, the recording of this whole conversation will be on the SDI YouTube channel. You can also continue to add your comments and responses and thoughts there. I believe it will also ultimately be available on our SDI site. We have recordings of all of our town halls from the past couple of weeks that are available there. So a lot of opportunities to re-watch this, go back and listen to Carolyn's lovely litany of questions, listen to the songs again, and share with others. Carolyn and Taya, do you have anything you want to add verbally or in the chat box about how folks can reach you with follow-up questions or learn more about your work?
Yes, feel welcome to reach out to me, any and all, in whatever ways resonant. My work can be found at my website, taya.ma, taya.ma, if someone wants to type that in there. And I welcome hearing from you in whatever ways, right? Lots of music there, lots of session work and online teachings of all kinds.
I also welcome people to reach out to me, and I posted my email address. It'll also be, SDI can also put it out there on their website. Invite people to reach out for resonant connections around soul-centric spiritual direction or Earthkeeper Wisdom School, which is a community of earth-based ceremony. And also, if you would like me to send you this self-inquiry process, as we come out, in many contexts, we're coming out of social distancing. If you would like these questions for your community, email me and I will email them to you. Thank you, SDI, and thank you, Lizzie, for vision and for weaving community in such rich ways. Such an honor to be a part of this.
Thank you both so much. Thank you, Frederica. Thank you, everyone. I can't say at the home office because everyone's at their own home office, but not all together in the Bellevue office. So it's good to be with you all. We'll close in a final moment of prayer. Great soul. Great fertile darkness that holds us. We say thank you again for all the ways that you source life into us and into this world. We give thanks for this time and space to be together here, to be in listening and in learning. And we ask that we continue to open deeper and deeper to receive whatever wisdom would call us closer to soul, would resource us to do the work that we are each uniquely here to do. We give thanks to the Bright and Well ancestors who've helped hold this container today into the more than human world that holds us always. We give our respect again to the First Nations peoples where we each are. And we give the deepest gratitude and yes and thanks to our own souls and to the collective soul. Thank you all so much. Thank you, SDI. Peace be with all who are here as you go about your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Frederica, so much.